Even when he was involved, we had good times. But looking back now, it was all just a show. It wasn't him. It was two different people.
Did you guys see that side of him? Or those sides of him,
He definitely had a temper that could switch quite quickly.
Tierne and Kevin Ewing began dating in the 8th grade, a turning point in her life, according to those closest to her.
We tried so hard to get them apart, and she'd date maybe somebody else or what have you, but he wasn't going to hear to that. She was his.
She just became distant, and
She wasn't allowed to do much with her friends. I mean, and she had a lot of friends.
she just started pulling away from the family, and he had control over her then.
Tierne was married at just 18, and soon the teen bride found herself raising 2 young children. At first, all seemed well between her and Kevin.
When we'd go to their home, he was nice as pie, you know. What can I do for you?
But Kevin Ewing had a reputation as a violent man, with a rap sheet to back it up. And he would soon turn that rage against the mother of his children. After this incident in 2001, which left Tierne battered and bruised, she received a court-ordered PFA, protection from abuser.
She had been hospitalized or required medical treatment from those injuries.
But as hard as it is to believe, Tierne would soon get back together with Kevin.
It was like a bad penny. It just kept coming back.
According to District Attorney Kristen Klingerman, who specializes in victims of domestic abuse, there's a good reason for that.
Tierne expressed to me over and over that she was so afraid for her family, for her adult children, and for her elderly parents who are very frail, and that she had to stay near him to protect them. He would always said that he would kill them in front of her if she didn't do his bidding.
And there were several times that that threat was made. Several.
It would fire my dad up so bad that we had to stop him many times from leaving to go look for him. Or
Ewing faced more charges of assault and abuse, but rarely served jail time.
He fell through the cracks of everything. No matter what he got into, he got out of it.
Trapped in this vicious cycle of violence, Tierne did her best to put on a brave face.
Did she tell you ever anything that was going on between them? Did she share fears or?
no, she would play things off. She would be, if she was here, you know, she could only stay for 15 minutes. She had to go home because she had to do something, or we knew it was because of Kevin.
She had to account for her time. A trip to the grocery store should take X amount of minutes, and if not, then he would call and want to know where she was and why she wasn't home yet.
Looks like he had his thumb on her.
And she said many times, Mom, I was awakened by the bed shaking. He was standing on top of the bed, straddling me. And she said, and I'd hear a click. And she said it was right here. It's hard to believe that people actually are this way. And to know that it's your own child.
Finally, in July 2016, Tierne reached her breaking point. She and Ewing had again separated, Kevin living with his mother, while Tierne remained in the family home with her adult son, Derek. Then a terrifying turning point. For 12 straight days, Tierne called in sick to work and made virtually no contact with her family. What no one knew is that she had been abducted by Ewing, held captive against her will, being hideously terrorized and tortured.
At night, he would tie a cord around her neck and then tie it to himself so that she couldn't escape when he slept. And multiple times throughout this, he would hold a gun to her head, tell her she's going to die, tell her her parents were going to die. He would kill her parents in front of her and then kill her.
Throughout the ordeal, Kevin never let Tierne out of his sight.
He went everywhere with her, to the bathroom, everywhere.
He took her to a very desolate area, to a location near water. She was terrified of water. She couldn't swim, and during that time, he had a metal rod that he put in a fire that they cooked hot dogs on, and he had burned her legs, several places up and down her legs. He had stomped on her foot. She could only wear flip-flops. He had stomped on her foot so she couldn't run.
Then finally, on day 12 of her torturous captivity, Tierne spies a chance to escape, but it could cost her her life. For 12 terrifying days, Tierne Ewing has been held hostage by her estranged and sadistic husband, Kevin Ewing, a man who authorities say has kept Tierne under his thumb since the 8th grade.
Kevin was very controlling of her. He was controlling of her phone calls, of who she saw, where she went, what she did, and that was the norm for them from the time that she was very young.
He forced her to call her work and tell them that she was sick and to call off of work.
She was the most courageous woman to be able to take that on a daily basis.
But on July 8, 2016, Kevin made a mistake. That afternoon, he drove Tierne at gunpoint to a local credit union to pay their mortgage.
I don't know what got into him, that he felt comfortable maybe, that he let her go in alone. And it was the first time she had been able to go alone. And once she was in there, immediately told them to call police, that she had been held hostage.
Washington 911, where's your emergency? Crown Federal Credit Union. We have a woman that's in here, and she says that she's in the bank, and she says that her husband is holding her captive. And he possibly has a gun. He's in the parking lot.
Okay, what kind of vehicle is he in? Did she tell you?
Vehicle. Truck.
Okay. A black truck?
She was very panicked. She wanted to be locked up.
Employees wisely lock Tierne in another room. Police arrive and take Kevin into custody.
And even once the police got there and had apprehended him and arrested him, she was too afraid to go out the front door. She insisted that the police take her out the back door where he couldn't see her.
It was here, outside this credit union, where Kevin was arrested. And Tierne thought her nightmare was finally over.
But the terror continues. Despite a court order that restricted him from having any weapons, Ewing was armed to the teeth.
He had 2 loaded guns, a handgun and a rifle, and he also had a knife.
Tierne is taken to a local hospital, and it's here that police learn the full extent of the abuse she has endured. And we want to warn you, her injuries are disturbing, the images graphic. She'd been pistol whipped across the head, her knees bashed with a hammer, her legs branded with a hot skewer, and spit on in the face. Even for veteran District Attorney Kristen Klingerman, it's some of the worst abuse she's ever seen.
He had also beaten her. He had slammed her about the room. She had bruises on her shoulders, her back, her legs. He had duct taped her mouth shut and with zip ties and duct tape tied her in a closet for an extended period of time. At night, he would tie a cord around her neck and then tie it to himself so that she couldn't escape when he slept.
When police search the Ewings' home, they find disturbing evidence of her torture and captivity. Used zip ties, duct tape, blood. But with their adult son Derek living in the home and Kevin and Tierne often leaving the house, how did no one ever notice? Our special correspondent Kim Goldman went looking for answers.
And no one saw any bruises. Maybe we don't pay attention.
Tierne explained to me she kept long sleeves on and did not point out the bruises.
How did those kids not know? 12 days? There's a lot of unsaid questions.
In fact, Tierne's own parents learned of her kidnapping in the local paper.
It was unbelievable what we learned from the paper. It was front page for I can't tell you how long.
Wait, that's how you found out that she was
held captive.
Oh my God.
Her father, Rich, was even more devastated when he saw what happened with his own eyes.
I went up to the DA's office and was talking to Kristen, and I come around there, and there was my daughter standing there. It's so hard.
In addition to charges of kidnapping, assaulting, and terrorizing his wife, Kevin's also violated his PFA, or Protection from Abuser order. But to everyone's dismay, the judge allows Kevin to post bond until trial, which means he's freed.
And the next thing we knew, he was walking around the streets. And the judge didn't think it was very harmful.
Fearing for her life, Tierne turns to DA Kristen Klingerman.
And they said, "Kristen, can we come see you? There's someone that needs to talk to you." They brought her over. She said, "He's out of jail and you've got to get him back in. If he's out, I'm going to die, and I don't want to die." I put forth the charges with which he was charged, that he had kidnapped her, he had assaulted her. I attached photographs of all the injuries that had been taken, of her wounds and her injuries. I explained the charges that he was being charged with. And one of those charges was important because, being that he had been convicted of domestic violence prior, he was not permitted under Pennsylvania law to be in possession of firearms, yet he was found with 2 firearms. I also explained that he had had the prior domestic violence and had requested that bond be raised to a more appropriate sum.
But to the shock of the community and the horror of her family, Judge Gilman rules against Tierne. Kevin is cut loose.
She would have finally been able to try to put her life back together.
She'd have never been free from him, whether he wasn't here or not.
They beat you up, they burn you, they choke you, they do whatever. And then, honey, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. I swear I won't. I swear it's the last time. That's
He's ordered to wear an ankle monitoring bracelet and strictly forbidden from contacting Tierne. But will it be enough to keep the battered wife safe?
She was certainly in fear for her life.
I have to say this about her. Throughout all the proceedings, and even when she came to me and explained the horrible abuse she had undergone, she had a certain grace about her. She was soft-spoken. She did not blame people. She always had grace and a certain class about her.
Did she harbor any anger towards the judge?
No, she never expressed any anger towards anyone. At times, tears would well up in her eyes and she would become very sad, but she never expressed anger towards anyone.
According to State Trooper Sarah Teagarden, for several weeks it seemed that Kevin was abiding by the judge's order.
He hadn't violated any of the conditions of that bond, and I think he did that intentionally. I really think that he thought, if I just play the good guy, if I show her that I'm willing to change, I'm willing to abide by all of these conditions and move on with my life and do the right thing, I think he did all of those to try to draw her back in and sucker her back in and get access to her again.
Sadly, if that was his plan, it worked to tragic perfection. In July of 2016, the fuse is lit on a human ticking time bomb. Kevin Ewing is allowed to post bond for his crimes, despite the horrible violence he's repeatedly inflicted on his wife, Tierne.
His family was able to obtain a bail bondsman that allowed them to free him from jail on 5% of that. So the family put up $5,000 to get him out of jail.
In an irony particular to cases of domestic abuse, Ewing is allowed to live relatively free until trial. His wife, on the other hand, is living in fear, seeking safety in a women's shelter.
the victims are being treated like the criminals. They put them in safe houses. And you know what? They find them every time.
Despite a court order forbidding him from contacting Tierne and an ankle bracelet to monitor his every movement, the fatal attraction of Kevin and Tierne drew them back together yet again. Tierne's sister tells our special correspondent Kim Goldman she believes it was an act of selfless courage.
So what struck me is that your sister ended up in the house with Kevin and his mom. Do you know why she ended up there?
I believe she was there to protect her family. I honestly believe that. I'm not saying that in some sick, twisted way of being manipulated for years that maybe she didn't have some sort of love, whether it be a twisted love or the only love you knew. I think the top priority was to keep everyone safe. And she didn't want anybody else drug into this with her.
Do we have any inclination as to why she may have gone?
The only thing I can tell you is that she was convinced that she had to stay near him to protect her family members.
Tierne was a tough girl. She was not going to go out there and look for help. She felt like she could handle it and that she could make it right and keep her family together.
Her father, Rich, has another theory. Kevin's attorneys warned their client that he was in serious trouble for his latest assault on Tierne.
Said to him, "You're looking at 20 years to life." And he always told me, "I ain't never going back to jail."
At midnight on August 30th, Kevin Ewing began the final chapter in this ill-fated romance.
The Pennsylvania State Police received a call from Rosalie Riggle, which is Kevin Ewing's mother, and she advised that Kevin had been in the house with a gun holding them hostage in the basement of the house. He had cut off his ankle monitor and took Tierne and put her in the car, and they left the house.
I received the call at about 5:30 a.m. that he had taken her, and that's when I knew there wasn't going to be a happy ending.
I got a phone call at work at about 5 after 6 and was told that she had been taken again. And my first thought was, he's gonna kill her.
And she said he has her, and I knew that she wouldn't be coming home. I knew it was going to be all over.
That morning, there was probably 6 police cars in the driveway, and they came in and they wanted us to leave because they were afraid he was coming after us.
Did they tell you why they were coming to the house?
They just said that they were here because they knew that he had threatened to kill us. He said, "Rich, I think you better leave." And we're not leaving. This is my house.
We had worked the case all day and hadn't had any luck in locating them.
That afternoon, a local farmer spots something unusual in a remote field.
He noticed in a barn located in the field that there was a pair of blue jeans hanging out the window.
It could be nothing, but police decide to check it out. The moment they arrive on scene, they're greeted by screams and gunshots.
They heard the initial shot. They heard a female voice say, "Why'd you have to shoot me?" And they heard the second shot. They heard a man's voice yell, "Get out of here." And then they heard the third shot.
Tierne is held in the loft of the old barn. Police make their way inside, confirming the family's worst fears.
We realized that the first shot that they heard, he had shot her in the forehead. And a .22 caliber, it's not a very powerful gun, and that bullet actually didn't penetrate her skull. It just kind of traveled between her skull and her skin to the back of her head. However, after she exclaimed, "Why'd you have to shoot me?" he shot her again in the temple. That shot did penetrate her skull and caused her death.
Kevin saved the last shot for his own temple. But incredibly, cops find him still alive.
They performed some life-saving measures on him. They were able to get him into a helicopter and transferred to a Pittsburgh hospital where he remained alive for a couple of days.
Kevin finally succumbs to his cowardly self-inflicted wound.
I've chased him so many times. I said I knew every inch of that property or that area out there except that barn. I did not know that barn was back there. Because if I did, I would have been there.
With my brother's murder, I became very close with the prosecutors in my case, and I knew how much they took home with them. I mean, I could see it on your face. Like I can't even imagine when you're so close to keeping somebody safe and trying so hard to fight for them. What goes through
It's
your
the hardest
mind?
thing that's ever happened to me since I took this job. Can we take a break?
I can't help but think that the system and the judge.
The judge.
The judge killed my daughter. The judge killed my daughter.
Crime Watch Daily reached out to Judge Gary Gilman for his response to Tierne's parents' allegations and got a brief no comment. But State Senator Camera Bartolotta was so moved by Tierne's story that she introduced domestic violence legislation in the victim's name.
With this bill, it would actually give our judges more tools to use in determining whether or not to even set bail, and to be able to use their discretion and deny bail if they believe that the risk assessment is high enough that there might even be a potential of a dangerous situation for a victim.
Kim Goldman broke the news of this promising legislation to Tierney's devastated parents.
It will be called
Tierney's Law.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lord. At least we helped her in some way.